These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thanks for joining us today on Market Journal. Well, here we are in Grand Island. It's the Nebraska State Fair, and of course, our coverage of the fair would not be complete without the man known around here on the grounds as Mr. State Fair. Steve White joins us. Steve, we've got beautiful weather.
We've got beautiful weather. We've got lots of kids. We've got a great time out here at the Nebraska State Fair. And Bryce, the fair is a celebration of agriculture, and as we see right here, that extends to these school kids, and they come out here for a unique field trip. 3,000 kids file into the Nebraska State Fair, not for rides or funnel cakes, but for this. Nebraska's largest classroom, complete with his giant pivots. Here, lessons don't come from a textbook, they come straight from the farmer and rancher. Milk even included.
How many kids do you have?
In this one we have 38.
At the Nebraska State Fair, school buses roll in with 3,000 students from across the state, ready to spend the day inside Nebraska's
Let's go.
largest classroom.
Do you notice anything? Do you see anything that you recognize?
From animal tracks to a corn plot growing on site.
Look, that one says popcorn.
Teacher Gene Vaughn of Grand Island uses the fair to provide a hands-on lesson about Nebraska agriculture.
Oh, when they advertise that it's the largest classroom in Nebraska, they are not joking. It is amazing.
The fair is Nebraska's big family reunion and a place kids come to drink it all in.
This is called a milking claw.
Kids learn where milk comes from while learning about wildlife, including an impressive bald eagle, and many lessons center on the farm as cattle producers like Gina Hudson share their story.
So it's really a key to our industry to be an advocate and let them know what great product that we raise here in Nebraska, which is beef. You can't go wrong with a great cheeseburger. And a lot of kids have told me already today they love cheeseburgers.
Gene Vaughn has been bringing Grand Island third graders for 15 years.
The kids just pick up so much information all in one day in such a short period of time. So many experiences that they don't get to have by being a city kid. And so this is just a wonderful way for them to learn about the agriculture and all the wonderful things of Nebraska has to offer.
For longtime volunteer Linda Lenz, that's what makes it worth it, even packing thousands of lunches ahead of time.
And then they come in, they have hot lunches. We serve homeschool kids, and most of the elementary schools from Grand Island come in the third grade. And so, but buses come from all over the state of Nebraska.
She says some kids don't know the difference between a pig and a cow.
You know, just the experience of farm life and Nebraska life, I think is the best thing for the kids.
Gene Vaughn says many of her students have family members who work at Grand Island's largest employer, the JBS beef plant.
Or quite a number of them. Their parents are people who work out there. Their parents work out there. So they hear about what mom and dad are saying about their job, but don't really understand it until they kind of get out here. So that's fun.
For Gina Hudson, the fair is a chance to not only connect consumers with their food, but help kids connect mom and dad's job to agriculture.
Is your parents part of agriculture? And they're like, oh no. Well, they don't realize the connection that there is, and that there's a huge connection with the packing plant, the producer, grocery stores. It's amazing how many are involved in agriculture.
We saw cows and some baby pigs and alligators and chickens and I think that's all.
Nebraska's largest classroom, where lessons learned stick with kids long after the bus ride home.
At Bryce, that largest classroom event, they welcomed public, private, even homeschool groups, a lot of different ag folks, certainly Nebraska Extension, local natural resources districts, all providing the programming.
Good chance for those students to get an
Absolutely,
in-depth
yes.
experience about what all is involved in Nebraska agriculture. Appreciate that story, Stephen. Stick around. We've got much more with you here at the fair here in a little bit. Up next, though, it's our chance to get a look at what's happening in the fields. We'll go out and check in with the folks from the Nebraska Corn Board. They're volunteering, actually, in the Nebraska beef pit. Here's our conversation. For this week's In the Field update, we're catching him now with Chris Grams. He's a member of the Nebraska Corn Growers Association, actually serves as the chairman of that group. And you guys are here at the Nebraska State Fair helping out with the beef pit. Good chance to catch up with you, though, and hear about how your growing season has progressed. So from planting to now, any surprises when it comes to 2025?
You know, it's been a pretty good growing season for us. The disease southern rust is really coming in. We're starting to see a little tar spot in the area. There's been some guys that are pretty fortunate that haven't had to turn pivots yet. We've probably pumped 5-6 inches already, so you're starting to see the pivots and the wells. They're starting to get tired, but you know it comes with the farming that we do. So we'll probably be harvesting in a month, I would say, starting with soybeans. I did on my way up here. There's a big feedlot north of Minden, and I saw the silage tractor going across the road, and the cutter was just north. So they're starting silage here today, and my cousin, he does seed corn harvest. And I was thinking that after Labor Day, they're going to get rolling out of Kearney's Bayer plant.
So 5 to 6 inches that you've put on through your pivots. I imagine that's probably on the low end of the spectrum of a typical growing season. That is a fair assumption, or what's normal look like?
I would say, it all depends on the year. We grow in Franklin County, so it's in the lower Republican water district. We're allocated to 13 inches this year. So I would say we're doing pretty fair this year. We've had some pretty good rains. We've had some worse years, but then we've had some better years where we've only pumped 1-2 inches just because the rain kept falling. So I would say this year's an average year for us in our area.
You mentioned southern rust, one of the things that has popped up here in 2025. Really all across the region, farmers have been battling that. How did you combat it this year?
You know, we put fungicide on early. There's a lot of guys having to spray again. We haven't had the reports that said, hey, you need to spray, but we're just hoping that it doesn't hit us. Because with the low prices this year, and we don't want to have to inquire another $30, $40 an acre to treat that southern rust.
My thanks to Chris for joining us out here at the Nebraska State Fair. Again, the Nebraska Corn Board, the Nebraska Corn Growers Association, lending a hand to the folks in the beef pit today. Up next, let's turn our time here at the broadcast over to the markets. Many producers around the state and frankly around the nation expecting good yields this year. However, as corn and soybean prices continue to take a bit of a hit, many producers continue to wonder when that might turn around. We had the chance to ask that question to Heather Ramsey. She's with the ARC Group right out here at the Nebraska State Fair. Here's our discussion from Wednesday. Heather, good to see you here at the Nebraska State Fair. Thanks for coming out and spending some time with us to discuss the current prices of corn and soybeans. You love talking about current prices.
Why not?
Not these prices, though. Bring us up to speed. What's been happening in both markets?
Oh, it's been kind of a seesaw over the last couple months, honestly, with us going a whole lot of nowhere in that mix. Last week was probably one of the most impressive soybean corrections we've seen in quite a while. When you look at kind of the 2-week pricing window on soybeans, there's about an 80-cent upward movement. Now, when I say 80 cents up, you think, yeah, I'll have a great number to tell you, and I really don't. We did breach over 1060 futures at one point last week, and we're hovering not too far off of that. When you look at the charts from soybean standpoint, we're in that upper segment from a pricing standpoint, and even though those numbers don't feel real great, it's probably been an opportunity. It's just hard to get too excited about it at this point in time, honestly. Shockingly, corn, I don't know if you've seen the headlines, Bryce, but this is the best corn crop we've ever seen in our life. It's the best of the best. And even with some reports that say maybe it's not, corn is continuing to hover right between $4 futes, $4.10, $4.12 maybe. For as massive as this oversupply has been talked about, the fact that we're sustaining numbers above $4 futures is quite honestly impressive in the December corn futures market.
Let's talk about corn. You're bringing up the headlines. We had USDA's surprising August report, putting a yield projection at 188 nationwide and some change. Pro Farmer wrapped up their tour. I think they came in less than that. Do you think USDA comes out with a lower number in their September report?
I have a feeling there's some adjustment. I think the farming community looks at Pro Farmer and thinks, yes, 182, we told you. When you look at the data from Pro Farmer and like year over year, kind of where they end up versus USDA, they're probably a little low. It probably warrants a better evaluation by USDA and maybe correcting that a bushel, 2 bushels to the acre. I don't think we're going to see them drop clear back down to 182, sure, 183, anything like that. But usually this is the biggest the crop is, usually. But we've seen some very interesting numbers at a USDA at odd times of the year. You know, that August report you mentioned, not a soul was thinking, hey, we're going to get an increase in corn acres, and we did. And so there's just some concern over what new information comes to light from USDA in these next couple months of reports.
On the soybean side of the equation, the story of 2025 is who's not buying. The number one buyer of U.S. soybeans has not bought beans.
Yeah.
And that trend continues. There's no new trade deal with China that's been announced out of the nation's capital. Yeah. But what kind of impacts is that having on the cash market, particularly the markets that would supply the PNW?
Yeah, and I will add to your headline news here. This week we get an announcement that China's going to sell off government stocks internally, which is another huge sign that they're saying, hey, no worries, you're not going to need to buy from the U.S. You buy from our government surplus. So that adds on to it. And from a standpoint of like here in the Midwest, here in Nebraska specifically, we've become very accustomed to really good competition actually in Nebraska for soybeans between elevators and processors. But when we don't have a PNW market for rail, that really means in the Dakotas, where are you going with beans? You got to find a different home. There's some of those elevators that are no bid for new crop beans. And so that's going to send some beans further south. We are expecting to see South Dakota beans kind of come into this Nebraska market. We're expecting even our commercials here, rail loaders on the UP, you know, that volume is just decreased. They don't have to compete as hard, which means the processor doesn't have to compete as hard. And when you look at central Nebraska, well, any processor in Nebraska really, we expect to see harvest basis at a processor somewhere in that 25, maybe 35 under. We're short acres, smaller crop than normal. We should see that same number, except for all these factors affecting demand. We are now seeing 50 under. So wow. This is a full 25-cent difference, basis value than what we've become accustomed to over the last couple of years. That 25 cents, when you have futures where they're at, that adds up in a hurry, and cash prices on soybeans are just not friendly to the farmer at all today.
It's hard to imagine that changing until something with China would be announced, correct?
Exactly.
All right.
Yep.
Well, we've not had the rosiest outlook. I guess you did say something positive, the fact that corn is above $4 still with all those factors.
Corn's
and
above
we saw
$4,
we saw a nice rally in soybeans. Let's talk harvest decisions, though, as folks are going to be hitting the fields here in the next few weeks. What do you want producers to know about managing the grain that they're going to be harvesting?
You know, I think there's been a lot of sensationalism built around this crop is so huge, no one's going to be able to handle it. There's some truth to that. You know, it's a little bit bigger corn supply than what we've been seeing the last couple years. We've had some significant droughts here, so this is a little bit of a change. I think one of the things that guys can do to protect themselves and make sure they have a home for things is think about, what do I have for on-farm storage? Do I hit it before I hit my elevator? Do I hit it after that market? And if I'm going to hit the elevator market specifically in this October window in the state of Nebraska, have those delivery locations booked up.
Great discussion with Heather. Appreciate her stopping by here at the Nebraska State Fair. Want to let you know that next week, a fan favorite here on Market Journal, Mike Briggs, will be out visiting him at his feed yard near Seward. Want to let you know you can get one of your questions submitted to Ask Mike. Go ahead and email that in so we can pass your question right along. Water, water, water. It's key to everything here in agriculture. Nebraska is among the most irrigated states in the country, but also among the most regulated when it comes to groundwater use. A recent yet to be published study Economic Impact of Groundwater Regulation in Nebraska looked at the impact of land values of regulations like new well moratoriums and groundwater allocations. You can learn more about the results of that study in the August issue of the Nebraska Farmer. Up next, let's check in on weather with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hunt. Eric, just a beautiful day out here at the Nebraska State Fair. As you take a look at the next 7 days, what are you seeing?
Well, thanks, Bryce. It's going to be a wetter holiday weekend for most of the state, certainly the eastern two-thirds of the state. Also, some much cooler temperatures coming back into play here for most of us this next week. Precipitation complements the short waves coming around the periphery of this western ridge. We'll have a couple different short waves moving into the state this weekend. The first one's likely to affect more of central Nebraska. The second one probably affecting more of eastern Nebraska. Certainly, though, central section of the state likely to pick up precipitation Saturday night into early Monday. Further east of state, probably more likely late Saturday, probably more likely Sunday into early Monday. But certainly, I think the entire eastern two-thirds state, somewhere between early Sunday and Monday afternoon, will have a pretty good chance of picking up precipitation. In terms of total precipitation, again, not much out here in the Panhandle, but certainly the eastern two-thirds of the state, a pretty good chance of picking up a half-inch or more of precipitation. Areas most likely pick up 1.5 to 2 inches, be up here across portions of north central and northeastern Nebraska. I do think pretty much anybody east of Grand Island is going to have a chance of picking up over an inch of precipitation from the system this weekend. Severe weather risk looks relatively low, but it's not going to be zero, and I do think there will be potential having some training of thunderstorms here across this portion of the state, so you may be watch out for some flash flood warnings early this or during the holiday weekend. Getting into the work week, we have dominated by troughing here across the eastern portion of the country. Very strong ridge here across the western portion of the continent, so really not record, but certainly warm temperatures compared to average here across this portion of the continent. Here in our region, surface cold front will move through on Tuesday into early Wednesday. Probably another reinforcing shot of cool air coming in and Thursday night into Friday. There'll be some chance of precipitation late Tuesday, probably again late Thursday. But for the most part, though, most of the state will likely remain relatively dry if these cold frontal passes. It'll be much more of a change in temperature than a big precipitation maker. In terms of temperature anomalies, again, it's going to be pretty cool across the entire north central and central section of the country. I do anticipate certainly the eastern section of the state maybe having a couple of days, the highs only in the 60s. Potential getting down to 30s across portions of northern Nebraska on Saturday morning. I don't think we're looking at a major risk of frost, but I can't necessarily say it's exactly zero for every place. So something to watch out for as we get later in the week. CPC shows continued cooler average temperatures favor through the entire period of September 4th to the 10th. I do think by the time we get into the week after next, you're probably looking at ridging returning here across this portion of the country. So our temperatures may flip back relatively quickly to above average, likely getting back to the 80s, potentially even the lower 90s across portions of western Nebraska by the time we get into the week after next. Precipitation, again, I think most of this next week will be relatively dry once we get past Monday. Precipitation chances do look like they pick back up again as we head towards September 8th and 9th. So Husker harvest days may be dealing with some moisture this year that maybe we haven't had to deal with as much in recent years. Recent precipitation, again, it's been pretty dry across most state here the last few weeks with a couple exceptions, southwestern Nebraska in particular, but certainly very dry across other portions of the Midwest here the last 2 weeks, 6 weeks in some cases. Soil moisture getting pretty short here across portions of south central Nebraska, elsewhere here in the Corn Belt. And we did see some expansion of the abnormal dryness here from holders over toward western Hamilton County on the drought monitor this week. And this is the temperature precipitation round for the week ending August 23rd, 2025. Back to you, Bryce.
Thanks for that update, Eric. We appreciate it. Let's turn our attention back over to crop conditions across the state. As we near harvest, there are still some disease concerns for Nebraska soybean producers. We caught up with Nebraska Extension plant pathologist at the final stop of the soybean management field days near Bede. Here's what Dylan Mangel had to say.
Sudden death syndrome, it didn't look like it would be such a big issue in the state. We hadn't seen it early, but now it's coming on later, and it's probably because we had a wet period after planting, and that's when that infection occurs in those roots. It's going to lead to diminished root systems, and why we haven't seen it until now is we've had so much moisture. So we haven't had stressed plants. Now we're just getting to that point late in the seasons where plants start thinking less about upkeep, and unfortunately we've got a lot of damaged plants that might be standing in fields across Nebraska. So, we've got a month or 6 weeks left in this season. We've got to get these beans through, and unfortunately, August tends to be the time when some good-looking fields tend to fall apart thanks to disease. So with that early infection and seeing it now, we've got to remember you can't do anything to manage it at this point. So don't rush out there with a fungicide treatment or anything. And also be aware that other things can cause that interveinal chlorosis type symptom that's on the leaves. So if you see that, don't jump straight to sudden death syndrome. Pull those plants, split those stems. Another pathogen that causes the same thing or similar symptoms is called brown stem rot. The inside of that plant will be rotted on the inside, whereas a sudden death syndrome plant will look fairly healthy with the exception of some staining towards the base of the plant and a weakened taproot that's probably going to break off when you try to pull it. So take the time, figure those out, because management is going to be specific for different diseases. And also some non-diseases can cause those symptoms, like triazole toxicity from fungicides. So take the time, figure out what that is, and at this point take good notes so you can follow up next time you put beans in that field and pick a variety that's got good resistance to sudden death syndrome or tolerance, and pick or potentially pair that with a seed treatment that's going to be effective for sudden death syndrome or other problems that you might be having that you've identified. The red crown rot is a historic southern disease. It's been around, but we haven't been concerned about it. There's a lot of diseases in the south on soybeans that we just don't have here because of different climate and their inability to overwinter. But what happened in the last couple of years is red crown rot had been identified as far north as Chicago or near there. And as soon as we saw it there, we learned that it could probably deal with our climate here in Nebraska. And in the last year or so, it's been found in eastern Missouri, and it's starting to show up further and further towards central, and potentially this upcoming month we might find it further west in Missouri as well, and that gets awfully close to Nebraska and Richardson County down there in the corner. So there's a reason we see a lot of diseases show up in Richardson County first. It's just where they come through first and where we happen to watch for them. But it could be a thing that we potentially find here in Nebraska in the next couple years. Now, don't be alarmed. It's not going to be a major issue that's coming on. The way we find these spreading, often they're here for a couple years before we even see them. So it could be around. It also makes similar symptoms on the leaves to sudden death syndrome at times. So another reason to take time and figure out exactly what sort of disease you have from those similar foliar symptoms. Also be aware seed treatments that are going to work on sudden death syndrome are likely to also be effective against this. It's a similar pathogen. The difference in the symptoms is going to be around the crown or the base of that plant. If you look on that stem, you're going to see red growths on the stem. Not just red staining, but actual small red growths on that stem. So if you see any symptoms like that, reach out to us at UNL, Nebraska Extension, or the UNL Plant and Pest Diagnostic Clinic. We'd be happy to look at those and help you figure out what you're dealing with. Watch closely, take good notes on what diseases you're seeing. White mold showed up late this year, or it infected late, and we haven't seen that plant stress that's going to drive that visible early infection. So we might still see plants diminish due to that. Take notes on where that is so you can place good varieties, good treatments, and plan for future fungicide or alternative or biological treatments to those areas that are infected. Focus your management on the infected areas, not across all broad acres where it's not necessary to get the best economic return.
Thanks to Dylan and the entire team at the Eastern Nebraska Research, Extension, and Education Center for all their hard work and dedication they have for Nebraska soybean producers. If you'd like to learn more about some of those challenges out in the field that the Extension experts are observing, be sure to check out the website cropwatch.unl.edu. You can see here with me right now, Mr. State Fair is back with us on the broadcast. And Steve, it's not the Nebraska State Fair without the key aspect, which is the livestock show.
Absolutely. At first, the first weekend, those 4-H kids, they had their chance to shine. It all culminated with the final drive. And if you've never been there, and I know you have been there, it is a moment, isn't it?
Yes,
to see
absolutely.
That.
Those kids work very hard throughout the year, and it was fun this year. I know you had a chance to catch up with a few of them.
We did, and the emotions were definitely on display during that final drive. Brecken Hirschfeld joining us, market swine champion at the Nebraska State Fair. How does that sound?
Feels great. Sounds good, yeah.
What was that moment like when the judge selected you and your animal there?
Felt good, I guess. I don't know, kind of crazy.
Tell me about all the work that went into getting here to this final drive.
A lot of work, hours working out with the pigs and working skin and hair and washing them and whatnot. Yeah, it was fun though.
So I just won Grand Champion Market Goat at the Nebraska State Fair, and I don't know, it feels, I can't describe the feeling. It's very surreal. I didn't think it was going to happen, but I'm just happy all my hard work paid off. I won last year, and this is my last year showing, so I'm just happy that I could go out in such a good way.
So back-to-back.
Yes, back-to-back.
That takes hard work, right?
Yes, it's a lot of hard work, so I'm super happy.
It was my goal to win Nebraska State Fair, so I'm kind of happy about that. So.
And tell me about your lamb.
His name's Impact, and I call him a tank in a life form.
What do you call it?
Put in a lot of work with him?
We worked him every day.
It's not easy getting here once, but to be back here and to win it, how's that feel?
It's amazing. I think
Has it sunk in what this means, or do you think maybe it'll take a while?
it might take a while, but I'm just super grateful for the opportunity.
Were you pretty nervous out there at all? Is it one of these things, do you actually hear what the judge says, or were you kind of in the zone just not even noticing?
Definitely a great weekend celebrating with those young people. They put a lot of time and work into that, getting to the final drive. We heard from one of those young people, a young man from Loomis. He was reserve champion at Market Beef Price. You could tell he really wanted to win, and he said he's going to do what it takes to be back here next year.
I loved our extended interview with him. He said, if you're watching this, you should be involved in 4-H and FFA. What a testimony.
I loved that as well. And as a 4-H parent, of course, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And to mention that, there are also some 3,000 exhibits, static exhibits here at the Nebraska State Fair. And I believe 5 of those came from the White House, this White House. Some blood, sweat, and tears certainly went into that. We made a couple of late-minute runs to Hobby Lobby and Walmart, picking up the right kind of adhesive to glue things on poster boards and stick it all down. But when you come in here and see your own kids with a purple ribbon, and one of my girls even had a special recognition.
I love it.
Tacked on to an essay that she'd written. I think tremendous opportunities through Nebraska 4-H.
It doesn't get better than that.
It does not.
We mentioned beautiful weather out here at the Nebraska State Fair this year. Quickly, have you heard any updates on attendance?
Yeah, first weekend they're telling me attendance was up about 10% over last year. Just gate-buster numbers. I think about everybody, at least in central Nebraska for sure, came out, and a lot of people from statewide have been to the Nebraska State Fair.
It's a big weekend right now as the FFA entries are here.
Absolutely.
A lot of different livestock shows and things to check out. So the State Fair will be here all the way through the close on Monday. I want to thank you for joining us on this week's special edition of Market Journal. Also thank Steve White for joining us here on the show. As a reminder, if you did miss one of our stories, we invite you to follow Market Journal on our social media channels. You can subscribe to Market Journal on YouTube. We hope to see you back here next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.